Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Maryland Apex Accelerator webinar. Glad you could join us today. I'm your host, Yasmin Razak. I'm the Marketing and Training Coordinator. Today's topic is 12 ways to fill your sales pipeline and find opportunities to win government contracts. And it is led by David Huff, who is the CEO of OST Global Solutions Incorporated. We'll get started very shortly. There will be opportunities for you to ask David your questions at the end of the presentation. Please type them out in the chat box. As always, a copy of the slides and the recording will be sent to you. Of course, I forgot to mention that, yes, this is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. For those of you who have not used Maryland Apex Accelerator services yet, we are here to help Maryland businesses to compete in federal, state, and local government processes. Our services are no cost to you. So if you need assistance, please sign up on our website, marylandapex.org. Okay, thank you, David, and welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Yasmin. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday, right? Happy Wednesday. My name's David Huff. I am the CEO of OST Global Solutions. I am about a year in that role. I took over from Alessia last year, around November. She moved to the Chief Strategy Officer role, and we're cranking away over here. So, welcome. This is a great class to talk about how to fill your pipeline, and this is one of the key functions to grow in your business. And regardless of what kind of business you have, whether it's all federal contracting, state contracting, local contracting, commercial contracting, everybody needs a pipeline. If you have a sales cycle that's longer, that's more than just people seeing you on the internet and swiping their credit card, you need a pipeline. This class is going to go over how to fill your pipeline for the federal government. There are very similar takeaways here for state and local contracting as well, but this is primarily focused on the federal government. So with that, I'm going to try to get through these slides pretty quickly. We have 20 slides to get through in about an hour. I want to make sure we leave time at the end for questions because usually there are questions. So let's get into it. This is OST Global Solutions. We were founded in 2005 by Alessia Smitrova. And we have won actually over $26 billion in funded contracts. We help develop people's pipelines. We help do business development strategy. We help qualify pipelines, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. And then we do a lot of capture support and proposal development. We also are a training company. This class comes from our GovCon incubator. Right now in Maryland, we are running the SBIR STTR proposal lab with Maryland's TEDCO. That just got re-awarded to us as a team. And if you have inventions, I would urge you to apply over there and start looking at the SBIR process. The program is excellent. It has won national awards and is very successful. So that's what we do. You guys aren't here for me though. Let's talk about you. So I think what is really, really important is to understand the federal business development lifecycle. This is very similar for state, local, and tribal contracting as well. It's probably pretty similar for commercial lifecycle as well, but there's some key differences. So one of the benefits about government contracting is that there is so much publicly available data for you to make decisions, which is generally not the case when it comes to commercial contracting. The contracts are also, on average, probably larger and longer than commercial contracts as well. The downside is that the cost of sales is probably a lot higher than the commercial side in general. So with equal access to information, you get more competitive bids. You get more people bidding. You get lower prices. You get more focus, and it becomes more difficult to win. So I'm sure many of you have experienced that as well. And by the way, because I want to head this question off, I get this question all the time. there is going to be somebody that is thinking right now, well, I'm a 1 or 2 person company, I'm a small business, or as a small business, this is this, such an we have such and such problem and such and such problem. This is a process that works no matter what size your business is. And what I can tell you is that it does not matter if you're a small business or a large business. We have plenty of mid-size and large business clients that struggle with this life cycle right here. So on the large business side, usually there's too many opportunities in the pipeline that are not real. On the small business side is that they just don't have a pipeline. So the data exists for us to build this pipeline, and yes, it's a lot of work to begin with. It is absolutely crucial for you to grow your business, and it is absolutely crucial for you to learn how to do and do consistently. This is not a do and forget kind of thing. This is something you got to do every week, every other week at least. And as soon as you take your eye off the ball for this pipeline and managing your pipeline, it starts getting out of date and it becomes more and more work to update later on. So I just want to put that out there that it does not matter what size business you are, you absolutely have to have a pipeline. Number one is we're going to talk about building capacity. This is something that you're going to grow over time. As you start securing wins, either as a subcontractor or as a prime contractor, you may find it necessary to start investing more into your business development, into your capabilities. So that could be business development analyst, it could be a capture manager, it could be a proposal manager, it could be hiring additional account managers, however your business is set up. It could be investing in one of the intelligence pipeline databases to make your work a little bit easier. Could be a lot of different things. Okay, so building new capacity will start this process. The next thing you need to do is you need to do a strategic business development planning session. And there are 2 key things that feed into this. One is market research. And within the market research, you need to understand. So one of the things that comes out of your business development planning session is who are you going to target? Like which agencies are you going to target? The federal government does millions of transactions a year. It's too much. So when we're talking about business development planning, we're talking about who buys what you sell, how do they buy it, how much do they buy, and which agencies which offices, which agencies within that, who are the major players, who are the major competitors, right? It's market analysis to some degree. And I'm going to show you guys a way that you can do this for free later in the class as one of the exercises, but you do need to make data-driven decisions. This data exists, it is free. You do not have to subscribe to GovWinIQ, you don't have to subscribe to Bloomberg Government or any of the other capture database intelligence platforms. They help, they speed things up, they take in the same data that you can get access to for free, and they make it easier to search. So it speeds up that process, but it is very expensive. And I get that. So I'm going to show you guys how to do it for free, but you need to get into the data. You need to make data-driven decisions about who your targets are going to be, and are you capable of winning those contracts, right? Especially if they're recompetes, if they exist already, you can look through the requirements of the contract that was awarded to so-and-so company. And you can see, hey, would I have qualified for this? Would I have potentially been competitive on this? That data goes into your business development strategy because it's going to go into potentially your new capabilities that you need to invest in the future. Okay. So with that, also, once you feel like you have good agency targets, you feel like you have good targets in terms of your contracts, do you have enough to make decisions? Can you stand up your marketing campaign to target the agencies and partners? The government is full of people, believe it or not. And these people make buying decisions like all people do, which they're emotional buying decisions. And people buy from who they know, like, and trust. You do have to introduce yourself to the government. But please don't be like a typical small business where you walk in there with your capability statement and you say, I'm an 8A, I'm a hub zone, I'm an SDVOSB, I'm a WOSB. What do you have for me? So we're going to talk about getting prepared and going in to talk about certain contracts to set yourself apart, right? Doing that preparation and speaking like someone who is here to make their life better oftentimes results in better outcomes than the other way around, right? So I, any of you who have ever called contracting officers before, you understand that sometimes you get information, sometimes you don't. That's just how it is, okay? So you do have to introduce yourself to your potential government customers. You also need to market to potential partners. All of the competitors who are out there are also your potential friends until you know otherwise. It's like Schrodinger's teaming scenario, right? So yes, they are potential competitors, but they are potential teammates as well. Okay. So that's very important to understand that until they say, hey, we're going to prime this. And well, and let's say that you make the decision, we're going to prime this too. Well, now you know who you're competing against, right? So calling the people who are likely going to bid on the project and seeing what their role is, sometimes they'll just tell you. A lot of times they'll just tell you, oh yeah, we've looked at that, we're not interested, or oh yeah, we're going after that for sure, right? You know, okay? Maybe there's room for you on the team, maybe there's not, but you know, right? But you do have to market to your target customers and to your target customers, okay? Then with all of this information, we're going to build our pipeline, okay? Because you're going to get opportunities from several different places. You're going to get them from sam.gov. You're going to get them from talking to agencies, looking at the forecasts, being plugged into your potential customers. What are they looking to bid on? What are they looking to acquire in the future? You know, these agencies, most of them have figured out that if they give people a lot of notice, they get better proposals. So I've seen a lot of government agencies, you know, starting to do this outreach. You know, I was just at the chips industry day yesterday in Rockville, and it was Commerce sitting up there and telling us about the requirements that they're looking to procure under the CHIPS grant, under the CHIPS and Science Act, right? So a lot of these agencies, they're pushing out forecasts, they're having these industry days. You will get opportunities from there as well. You're also going to get opportunities from your partners, okay? And then you're going to find opportunities through doing this desk side research. So one of the things that I've seen over as a trend over the past, even prior to COVID, so maybe like 2015 to 2020 to now, is people have been relying, business developers, capture managers have been relying too much on GovWinIQ and BGov. They look at that stuff and they're like, oh yeah, that's what we're gonna go after now. They're neglecting the legwork. When all is said and done, at least the way that I look at it, business development is part of the sales process. You have to engage with people and you have to go and meet them. You have to go and do the legwork, and sometimes that means going to the industry day. Sometimes that means in researching and preparing ahead of time. Okay. All of these things go into your pipeline. Contacts of potential opportunities go into the pipeline, right? So if you're small, you can run your pipeline on Excel. If you start having 3 or 4 or more people that are in the pipeline, then you might want to have some sort of platform. We just bought Salesforce. It wasn't that expensive, actually, surprisingly. So we had Active Campaign before. I didn't like it. I've been through a lot of different pipeline platforms. Salesforce developed one for the government. It's pretty good. You know, there's Technomile. There are these platforms that are out there that are, and even Technomile is built off Salesforce. There's all these platforms out there that are relatively inexpensive that are starting to be customized for the federal government for contracting. So if you're small, you got a 1-2 person BD shop, Excel is perfectly fine. If you're starting to get a little bit bigger, you might want to look at a pipeline tool. There's a bunch of them. So I'll leave that to y'all to do your own market research on that. But basically, when we put an opportunity in the pipeline, we need to get for strategic fit. And we're going to go over, and I have a slide here at the end where we're going to go over the search criteria that you would want to answer in your business development planning session. But every opportunity that you find, you're going to basically compare it back to your ideal opportunity profile that you did your planning with. And I would recommend you do your planning once every 6 months, at least once a year. It's like, hey, these are the targets. We're going to focus on opportunities that meet these criteria in terms of size, time frame until release, and there's a whole bunch of stuff, and we'll go over that later. But you want to compare all of the opportunities that you meet and prioritize your opportunities according to the fit of your BD planning session. Okay. So that's very important, this check for strategic fit. And if you're starting to find a lot of these opportunities look the same and require certain things like maybe an ISO certification or CMMI certification or bonding or whatever. There's a whole bunch of stuff, or cost plus contracts, or a lot of the contracts you're looking for being competed on one of the GSA schedules, or they're going through one of the large contracts like Soup 5, for example. Soup 6 is currently being competed. Right? So you might find out that a lot of the opportunities you're looking at require you to have an IDIQ, a government-wide acquisition contract, or a schedule that needs to go into your pipeline for the next recompete. So I know a lot of people bid on Oasis Plus just recently, earlier this year. They're having another on-ramp in, I think, January, right? So if you didn't get on it the first time, maybe you're going to be ready for it in January. So these types of vehicles need to be in your pipeline as well. It's very, very important. What I've seen, the most recent number from Bloomberg has been 70% of all government spending is going through the schedules, IDIQs, and GWACs, which means you have to win a contract on one of those contracting vehicles before you can bid on the stuff that they release under that vehicle. Right? So if something comes out on one of the GSA schedules, you have to have that schedule in order to bid on it as a prime. Or something comes out on Soup. You have to have the Soup contract before you can bid on it. Right? So, all right. With all of that, you then need to qualify each individual opportunity. We are not going to talk about qualification today. That's a different class. But there's basically 3 things that you need in order to qualify an opportunity. Right? You need to confirm with the government that it's real, that it's actually going to be competed, that it's actually still a requirement. Okay. So that's the big thing. Number 1, you have to understand, hey, is this still a need? Does the customer still have a need? You have to know who the buyer is, like who's going to be making the buying decision. SEWP is SEWP. That's the Solutions for Enterprise-Wide Procurement. It's a NASA contract. It's the largest IT contract in the government. The third thing you need is they have to have money. Okay, so you need to know, hey, you have to know who your customer is. That customer has to have a need, and that customer also has to have some budget for it. So if you don't have one of those 3 things, it's not an opportunity, it's a contact. All right. So what we found, we do qualification services for our clients, and what we found in our large companies, our large company clients, is about 50% of the stuff that they find on GovWinIQ is not real. And what I mean by not real, it is either not a current requirement, or it is going to go on a vehicle that they don't have, that our clients don't have, right? So just keep that in mind, that GovWinIQ and some of these other intelligence databases out there, they take the expiring contracts and they automatically assume that they're going to get recompeted, and then they back out like 6 months prior to, and I'm exaggerating a bit, but they back out a certain amount of time before the contract expires, and they say, okay, this is when the RFP is going to come out again. And that's just not the case. Like, some of these contracts that the government buys are one-time things and they're done, right? So if the government did a survey, for example, well, they might not redo the survey. They might move to the construction phase after the survey and the planning is done, right? So it would be a different contract, and that survey and planning contract would not be recompeted. That's just an example, but there's a lot of stuff that goes into pipelines that's not real. You have to confirm it's real. The only way you can do that, unfortunately, is to call the government and to ask them, hey, are you guys still recompeting this? Is this still a requirement? And sometimes the contracting officers will not want to talk to you. Sometimes they'll be rude. Sometimes you won't talk to anybody. Whatever. Like it happens, right? We're in sales. We need thick skin. Having a no is something that happens all the time. Like it's no big deal. So, but we do need to figure out if it's real. If the government is doing marketing on it and they're always pushing out updates and new information, it's probably real. They wouldn't be doing all that work without it. So, but for some of these where the RFI has been sitting out there for like a year or 2 years and nothing's happened, like that's a sign that maybe they just didn't compete it and maybe it's dead, right? Anyway, so you do need to qualify each opportunity. Capture is a different phase. Like people spend their entire careers doing capture. OSD has 6 phases of capture: customer engagement, intelligence gathering, win strategy, competitive analysis, teaming, solution development. Think of capture as like pre-proposal preparation. You're basically positioning your company to win, right? You're finding out the intel, you're finding out about the unwritten requirements, you are learning about the customer hot buttons to turn them into win themes, you are doing competitive analysis to see who is going to be competitive, maybe who would fit your gaps or fill your gaps on your team. You're making those teaming decisions before the RFP comes out and you're brainstorming on it, coming up with a solution, right? Solution is people, process, and technology, basically, right? So who's going to do it? What are they going to do? How are they going to do it? That's basically what solution development is. And then a lot of the other stuff is persuasion, right? So that's capture. There's a lot to do in every single one of those phases, but that's basically what it is. Then you're going to write your proposal. I'm sure the majority of you have experienced that to some degree. And then you want to do business development during project execution. You need to train your workforce to be your sales force on contract. So they need to keep their eyes and ears open for potential opportunities. Is there a need? Okay, so that's the life cycle. I spent a lot of time on that because it's very important to understand. What I want you to do is I want you to think about your pipeline as a funnel. And at every single funnel, these filters get more fine, right? So your job as a business developer is to say no to things, find reasons to not bid on them. Your pipeline is the engine for your business growth. The quality of your pipeline affects the value of your company. So if you're looking to exit at some point, your forecasted pipeline or your factored pipeline is something that would be adding value to the sale of your business, or if you're going to exit in some way. So what I mean by that is your factored pipeline is your total pipeline multiplied by your win rate. So if you had $100 million in your pipeline and your win rate was 40%, say, then you would expect to win $40 million out of that $100 million. That's your factored pipeline. Okay. Too many companies operate in a reactive mode. You look at things drop on SAM.gov and that's all the preparation that's done. Most of the time it's too late. Like you can't really do much of the preparation. So what I want you guys to think about is your pipeline being this funnel. You have this universe of opportunities. As part of your market research and business development planning, you need to come up with your ideal opportunity profile so that when you are going through that universe of opportunities, you're making an interest, no interest decision. Hey, do I want to look at this further? If the answer is no, then stop looking at it. Right? And I'll show you how to read an RFP very, very quickly to get through that stuff. But then you need to qualify each opportunity. Is it real? Do you know who the buyer is? And it might be a prime. So if you're going to be a subcontractor on a contract, your client is going to be the prime contractor. They are going to contract work to you. You are going to give it to the prime. The prime is going to turn it into the government. So your client at that point is your prime. So all of this stuff works for prime contractors as well. And when you qualify it, is it real? So does your customer have a need? If the answer is yes, good. Do they have budget? Yes. Okay. And do you know who the customer is? Yes. 3 things, it's qualified. That's basically it. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of additional things you can add into that, but this is basically where capture starts. Once you have an opportunity that you verified is real, that you want to pursue, now you can start preparing. And don't get intimidated by capture, right? You're basically trying to figure out what the customer really wants, how you can give them what they really want, and building it for them. That's basically what you're trying to do. So wherever you have a gap in terms of like a capability or past performance, that can be solved through teaming, or it could be solved through hiring a key person or getting a letter of commitment for a key person. You might have to do a little bit of recruiting prior, but these are things that you can do to uh, impact your win probability, right? Hey, I figured out that the client really doesn't like the incumbent. They really don't like the incumbent people, or maybe they just don't like the incumbent leadership. Like someone in the government told me that. Or you can call the incumbent personnel. Like I wrote a contract one time where there were 4 or 5 different companies that were trying to win the contract. And they set up signs at the local bar. We're in the middle of nowhere, so there's like 3 or 4 bars that like you knew where they all were. They literally set up signs at the bar out front saying $200 an hour for information on the contract. And everybody in town worked on the contract. So I mean, like this stuff happens. That's an ethical way to collect information. Like going on LinkedIn and finding people who used to work as a contractor at that company, at that agency, on that project is a great way to find information. Most of the times they'll tell you for free. Sometimes you got to give them a little bit of money. It's okay. Like you pay them for their consulting work. Like people moonlight all the time. Your capture review is your next kind of filter is like, hey, are you actually making progress? So you determine that this opportunity is real. Are you actually making any progress? Are you actually doing any of the action items? If you're not, then it's okay. Hey, that might be a lower priority. That's okay. Or hey, I'm just not making any inroads here. I'm talking to a bunch of people. No one's getting back to me. It seems like it's wired for the incumbent, or it seems like the government likes the incumbent. Then deprioritize that opportunity, right? But that's what this next filter is are we making the are we making progress on an opportunity? And then you have a bid, no bid when the final RFP comes out. Did anything change? Are we still actually prepared? Is this something that we need to spend money on? Or did something happen? Stuff happens all the time. All right, so in our pipeline, we need opportunities that are very long term, 2 to 5 years, basically the next recompete. Others that are long term, 1 to 2 years. Midterm is 6 months to a year. This is typically where a well functioning small business works. Um, Somewhere around the 9 month mark before the final RFP comes out. So you're generally going to have some sort of market analysis, RFI, sources sought, maybe an industry day, maybe it's on the forecast, maybe there's a draft RFP, right? That's about where well-functioning small businesses start doing capture or preparing to win the proposal, write a winning proposal. Short term or imminent, those in the next 2 to 5 months. And then the big thing here is we need to ensure the opportunities are real and rank them in order of priority. What I mean by that is your priorities should be focused on the highest win probability. So which customers are giving you the most time? Which ones are the most receptive to your message? Which ones are you finding information on? Like those become higher priority opportunities, and you need to have a priority ranking within your pipeline so you can sort opportunities by the expected RFP release date and by priority. And those 2 filters will help you zero in on the ones that you're making the most progress on. You do need to clean and edit your pipeline regularly. Like this is something you got to do on a weekly basis. And I'll show you some ways to make that a little bit easier. All right, basically you have all 3 branches of the government spend money and acquire contractor support, either through hardware or professional services, whatever, right? There's something to note here is that there is no central buying authority. GSA is trying to consolidate the buying within their agency. That's one of their visions. Agencies generally follow the FAR. There are many agencies that don't. DoD has the DFAR, which is different. FAA has their own acquisition regulations. The Intel world follows their own regulations, right? So there is no central buying authority. And within each of these branches of government, there are hundreds of buyers and many forms of selling. Okay. So I just want to throw that out there. You got all kinds of stuff. And once you start getting into state, local, municipal, and tribal education, the SLED market, the number of buyers explodes. You know, they don't like the federal government is trying to achieve economies of scale with buying power. Once you get down to like cities and municipalities and educational districts, like they all do their own thing, right? So who are the buyers? Well, there's the 15 cabinet level agencies that we're all familiar with. DoD, HHS, DHS, VA are the biggest. The official tally like varies depending on where you look, but there are 60 or so independent agencies and government corporations like the CIA, GSA, SSA. There's 60 or so additional boards, commissions, and committees. There's 4 or 8 quasi-official agencies, 16 international organizations. NASA, CIA, FAA are not cabinet level agencies. They are different. So, as a lot. They all kind of buy differently. And this is why I put so much emphasis on the beginning of figuring out where you want to sell to, who buys what you sell. You have to figure that out. And then you have to look at how do they buy what you sell? Because they're all different. They all have their own thing. So believe it or not, NASA is one of the 3 government agencies that is authorized to create GWACs, government-wide acquisition contracts. There's only 3. There is GSA can do it. If you guys have seen Oasis Plus, Polaris, STARS, those are GWACs. VETS is a GWAC. NITAC can do it out of NIH, and they did CIOSP4. That was their big one that they did a couple years ago. I think it's still in protest purgatory. And then NASA. Those are the 3 entities within the government that are authorized to develop GWACs, which means anybody in the government can buy off of that. Okay. There are other agency strategic sourcing vehicles, like the Army, for example. If the Army is going to purchase software or hardware, they have to go through the chess office, and that is a contract. They have a couple contracts called ITES. So it is required if you're in the Army, you have to use ITES first for hardware software purchases. And then after that, if you don't get what you want, you can go outside of those vehicles. But it's mandated by the Army that all of that work has to go through those vehicles, right? NOAA has ProTech, the professional and technical support services, or whatever it's called. All of the work that falls under that scope of work within the ProTech IDIQ has to go through ProTech first before it can go to GSA or before it can go somewhere else, right? Some of these agencies have these contracts that you have to use for a specific scope of work. So if you're selling, yes, ITES 3 and RS3, they're planning on merging. It's called MAPS. Is the new one. They're releasing stuff on that, so that'll be interesting to see that. But anyway, back to this. You have the legislative branch. U.S. Congress buys a bunch. The architect of the Capitol is a big buyer within Congress. The judiciary branch has a ton of work that they contract out for all their courthouses around the country. The SLED markets are huge as well. And this is just for contracting. If you're on the grant side of things, there's another $500 billion that the government issues in grants. So a lot of you are probably familiar with SAM.gov, the System for Award Management. You had to register there to be a contractor. There's also grants.gov, which is where all the grants get issued. Very different than contracts, but actually not that different in terms of pipeline and what you have to do to secure grant contracts. All right, so federal market snapshot here. I'm going to talk to you about USAspending.gov. So many of you are very familiar probably with all of the different paid databases that are out there. Well, a lot of that data comes from USAspending.gov, and it comes from FPDS.gov. Those are two websites that are free that put all of the transactions that the government has that they're allowed to authorize on the websites. A couple things to note: DoD lags 6 months in reporting their spending for national security reasons. Other federal agencies, yeah, FPDS.gov, yeah. Other federal agencies lag about 2 to 3 months to report their spending and their obligations. So just keep that in mind. If you're a DoD contractor, your data is going to be 6 months old. Also, classified data does not go here. So just keep that in mind too. It's only the unclassed stuff. So what I did, I was having some trouble with USAspending.gov earlier. How can I move this? There. All right. So you guys can see that, right? So when you go to USAspending.gov, it's going to look like this, okay? You can do search award data. You can explore the data. I just do search award data, right? And then you come to this filter, this advanced search, right? And there's a lot of stuff that you can do. You can search by fiscal year. We are technically in fiscal year 2025. It started October 1st. So the fiscal year Q1 goes from October 1st to December 31st, which is for the calendar year, the fourth quarter. So for the government, it is their first quarter. So there might be some spending obligations reporting, probably not a lot. So 2024, 2023, you can go all the way back, right? You can have award type. So you can do contracts, like individual contracts. There's IDVs. IDV stands for Indefinite Delivery Vehicle. And that includes GWACs, indefinite delivery contracts, IDIQs, etc. Supply schedules, basic ordering agreements, BPAs. Okay. There's also grants, loans, all that stuff. You can do it by agency. You can do it by treasury account symbol. All of your government customers have a treasury account symbol. You can do it by location, recipient, all this stuff, right? What I would like you guys to focus on are NAICS codes, which you all are familiar with, right? It's the North American Industry Classification System. You had to select a primary NAICS code within your SAM.gov registration. So you can type codes here. You can put all your codes in if you'd like. I would recommend doing it one at a time. And then what I'd like you to do is look at PSC codes, product or service codes. So not very many people are familiar with PSC codes. It is a similar but different system. It is another way to classify economic data. So when you're just doing NAICS codes, it's not super accurate. When you combine it with your PSC codes, it's very accurate. So what I did is I grabbed the 541330 code, which is professional services engineering NAICS. Okay, and then in the PSC code, I grabbed the other environmental services studies and analytical support. That's F999, right? So I put this in. You can't really see it. What happened? So I'll do 541330. So you type in the code there, and sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's not, right? But this engineering services, right? So I selected that. And then under the PSC code, I put F999, whoops. And we have this remediation services type contract. There are other ones. There's like, so within this market analysis that we help somebody do, they're an environmental remediation type company. So in the PSC codes, there was this other environmental services studies and analytical support. There was F108. This is a PSC code, which is hazardous substance removal, cleanup, and disposal services and operational support. So what you'll see is that the PSC codes are much more descriptive of what the work actually is. So when you look at engineering services could be all kinds of stuff, right? But when you combine it when you combine the NAICS code with engineering service with a PSC code, now you get really accurate stuff. And now we're looking at contracts that are perfect for, or at least a lot closer to what it is that we actually do. In this case, it would be environmental remediation, right? So basically what we see here is when we hit search, we have the top, we have 24, 23, 22, and 21, so 4 years. And I have 230 contracts. There are 66 IDVs. There's no grants. There's none of this other stuff. And now I actually have the legitimate contracts in the recipients, the obligations, and how much they've spent on each of these contracts. So now I know what the contracts are for me that I can start looking at. And I can compare this back to the size of contract that I can bid on. So if I'm a small business and I'm like, all right, well, I can probably handle a $2 to $5 million contract. Well, I can now start looking through here on where are the contracts that are within my range. And we start seeing, well, now we start getting down to some of them, right? So yeah, some of these are a lot of large businesses, but don't be scared by large businesses. So additionally, what it's going to show you in addition to the contracts that match those NAICS and PSC codes is going to say, hey, who are the awarding agencies? And you can actually drill down into these. So DoD, Department of Homeland Security, NASA, USAID, GSA, right? So there's some spending. This isn't super helpful, but this is spending by month. This actually is helpful, right? Because a lot of environmental remediation requires certain certifications or licenses to do. So now we know where the spending mostly happens. It mostly happens in Virginia, or at least the buying agency is within Virginia. It might be that they're buying for somewhere else. So that might be something we have to look at. Texas and California. Okay, so if geographic region is an issue for you, it will show you that as well. And I just picked something small. You guys can, there's probably a lot of IT or professional services type companies on here. You guys can do the exact same thing with your NAICS and PSC codes as well and get the targets. And basically what this is doing is it's filtering out that universe of opportunities and the stuff that would actually be valuable for you to look at. And this is 100% free. You don't, like, it's good enough to start building your pipeline off of this than it is to, to look at SAM.gov or to buy one of the intelligence databases. So the IDVs are interesting. I want to look at that to see which IDVs need to go into the pipeline as well. And again, you can do this for any combination of NAICS codes and PSCs as well. If you have a contract, like if you are currently on contract as a prime or a sub, whatever contract you're on has a NAICS code and has a PSC code. Guaranteed. All right, so what do we got here? So these IDVs are kind of interesting. There is no money that goes through them. Oh, here's a couple. Looks like a GSA contract. Let's look. So USA spending, it's got a lot of data there, so sometimes it takes a while to load. I don't know how good my internet is, but it is what it is. So I'll wait for that to load. We'll come back to it here in a minute. But this exists. This is free. These are the things. These are the tools at your disposal to help you fill your pipeline and grow, right? So the other thing that's really good, all of your government agencies, all of your customers, even the offices, they all have a doing business with, or a business or a procurement. Some of them will actually post forecasts. Some of them are better than others. You also might pay a visit to your Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization for information as well. They're really good at telling you to go look at the website. So your mileage may vary with the OSD booths. A lot of great people. They might be able to help you with an org chart or contact or help you make an introduction. But they're people, right? They're here to help you. Develop a relationship with them. Sometimes they get tired of industry, us, coming without preparing at all and not knowing anything. So just keep in mind that that's the majority of people that they deal with, and I would be frustrated too because a lot of the stuff that they tell the majority of people to do, you already should know, right? So USAspending.gov, you can search relevant keywords, you can do years, you can do award type, you can do awarding agencies, so you can actually search within agencies. If you wanted to focus on the Army versus the Navy or Marine Corps, it's totally fine. You can do that as well. But the NAICS code and PSC codes are very important. You can also search by set aside type if you need to. You want to sort by amount to see who the largest players are. Explore the contract IDV tab with award amounts to see what IDVs are most popular. Let's go back and see if it loaded. It did. Yeah, so AECOM has been winning work off of GSA schedule. So if you're environmental remediation, you need to figure out which schedule this is and get on that. So one other thing to keep in mind, guys, is that don't be afraid to compete against large businesses. Don't be afraid to put a proposal in for an unrestricted bid. Small businesses win that all the time. And when you get into companies like AECOM and Amentum and some of these other massive companies, man, they put the JV team on some of their smaller bids. They all have like the strategic bid threshold, and sometimes they don't pay a lot of attention to some of the smaller bids. And what I've seen is that those proposals are basically chest beating, back patting, and say, oh well, hey, we're AECOM and they're a great company. Well, basically their proposal solution is, we're a great company, we've done all this, trust us. That's basically what it is. And I'm not picking on AECOM. You know, there's a lot of large businesses that do that. You know, there's a lot of large consulting companies that do that, but just don't be afraid to throw your hat in the ring for unrestricted bids too, because large businesses, believe it or not, they have resource constraints just like small businesses do. They got budgets, they got reality that smacks them in the face every single day. So just keep that in mind. If there's a contract that's perfect for you, don't be afraid to bid on it if it's unrestricted, and don't be afraid to call some of these large businesses and say, hey, I have the inside track to this. We're prepared, and we think with you on our team, it would be a slam dunk. Don't be afraid to make that call, right? And if they say they're going to bid on it too, cool. Well, you know. And I've seen, tell you the dysfunction of large businesses. One of the largest government contractors was actually competing against one of its own divisions because they just weren't getting along. I mean, stuff happens, right? People are people. And we're in a people business, particularly when it comes to this work. So we need to be informed and we need to make data-driven decisions, but we are in a people business. The other stuff we want to do is we want to get the agency org chart. You know, there's different ways to get it. If you can, it'd be great. We want to identify the expiring opportunities and verify them with the contracting officers that they're real. Please don't ask them anything that is confidential. How the performance of the contract is doing, they're not going to tell you that unless they like you. If they won't talk to you at all, they don't know you and they don't like you. I mean, I don't blame them. I'm not going to answer questions for everybody that calls me. But for someone I know and like, I'll give information to them, right? And I buy stuff all the time from people, right? It's the same with contracting officers. So if you call them, say, and they answer the phone like, hey, I'm a small business, you know, I'm doing research here, I want to make sure that we're getting a great proposal to you guys. You know, would you be interested to hear our capabilities about how we can help? I'd love to learn what you guys are struggling with to see if we can deliver that. But basically, I'm trying to figure out if it's real and if it's funded so that I can make a decision on whether or not I'm going to spend the time and money to prepare for this. Like, that's a reasonable request, right? And sometimes the answer is going to be no. That's okay. Like, move on. But, I mean, sometimes the answer is, oh, well, hey, I'd love to meet with you. I called a contracting officer one time for a small janitorial contract for one of my clients, and the RFI had already passed, and I called him up and I was like, hey, you know, my client's an 8A company. I know the RFI passed a couple weeks ago, but we have perfect past performance for this. Would you be interested in receiving our market information? And the contracting officer I spoke to was just wonderful, and she was like, yes, please, we only had a large business respond, and we would love to meet your client and we would love to get that information. Like it happens, right? If the answer was no, like, oh, well, we got a bunch of bids or we got a bunch of source selections, so we don't need any more, we'll be posting, the final RFP. Totally fine, right? No big deal. So all of this you can do with research. Some of the, I believe on FPDS, it lists out who the contracting officer that managed that contract was. So you might be able to find that out. Some of the other capture intelligence databases will actually aggregate that information. So generally people who buy certain things buy them again, like within the organization, within the procurement shop. So GovWinIQ has account planners, which are useful to some degree. We can research relevant agency reports, plans, and initiatives. You want to like YouTube is the world's second largest database, and the government puts stuff on YouTube all the time. Like, you need to be looking to see if anybody in the program shop is out talking about their program or marketing about their program, or if they're releasing statements. Like, you need to research and find that stuff out. Competitor insights, you can go to USA Spending, you can search by a recipient, you can search by contract. So like, what I would recommend is that you don't recreate the wheel. If there is a juggernaut within your industry, within your agency, you can go and research how they got big. Which contracts did they win? Are those contracts still active? Which vehicles do they have? Who do they partner with? You can just document all of that stuff because it's publicly available information. And you can just copy it. Say, hey, how'd they win? And you can go back and you can see. You can also check on LinkedIn for who works for the company. I'll tell you, I've reached out to a lot of people on LinkedIn, and you'd be surprised how much they tell you if you pick up the phone and call them or set up a meeting. And sometimes they'll be like, oh well, I have an NDA or whatever. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? They say no. I mean, okay, move on. There's other people that know, right? You want to visit the agency? When you go to the OSD booth, please go prepared, right? So understand. You can get an overview of how to do business with the agency by going on their website, right? If there's information that maybe you need that you're having a hard time finding, that would be something that you'd want to ask your OSD booth. It's like, hey, I'm potentially going after these 4 opportunities at Treasury. And the Treasury's OSD booths are wonderful. They put a lot of time and effort into trying to help people in doing industry days and like meet the primes and all of this stuff, right? So they're trying to connect their vendor base and ask them, hey, who have I talked to? Like, do you know, like, I cannot find who the contracting officer is going to be. I can't find if it's real. Like, I think I'd be great for this contract, but I just don't know because I can't get anybody to talk to me. They might be able to help you. And, there's a lot of great people there. Who are the top contractors that are small business friendly? At Treasury when I used to go there, Verizon was there all the time, and they were trying to sign up small businesses every week or every month that they hosted one of these things. So, the OSD booths might know as a large business, it's a good practice to have relationships with your OSD booths so that you can have that continuous influx of new small business to meet your small business contracting goals. But, if there's information you're having a hard time finding, like, please don't waste the OSD booth's time with how do I do business with the agency. They're just going to tell you to go to the website. Like, you can research that ahead of time. But you can go to the industry day too to meet the contracting officers. So contracting officers are out there. Sometimes they'll do one-on-ones at the industry day. That's a great time to talk to them. It's like, hey, and again, you can't ask them, hey, how's the incumbent doing? They're not going to tell you that. Unless they really like you, in which case you've probably worked with them before. So, hey, is it funded? Is it a need? What are you guys struggling with? Is there something that we can do to provide to you that you guys might be interested in? You can also vet your solution with them too if you've prepared that far in advance. But these 4 bullets, these 4 questions right here, sometimes the answer is we don't know yet. We're still doing market analysis, right? So these 4 bullets are things you can ask. And then as the results of this, what IDV should you have access to? Which certifications do you need? Which do you need a facilities clearance? What agency should you target? Are there capabilities you need to acquire either through teaming or building them yourself? Um, yeah. So this is an opportunity. I've talked about this before a bit. Um, so an opportunity requires a buyer, need, and available funding. Otherwise, it's not an opportunity. There are contracts out there that the government will procure, and they say we will fund this contract as funds become available. So you'll need to make a strategic decision about whether or not you want to bid on that. Okay. These are the multiple ways that you're going to learn from about opportunities. These are capture intelligence databases. You guys have probably seen a lot of these. SAM.gov is free. You all have to be there. That is the source. So a lot of times I'll just go there. They will post opportunities, early RFI stages. So you want to combine these two, a bunch of these search methods together. Prices vary. A lot of these you have to pay for. All right, so it's very important to determine search terms. So, like for example, if you're a cybersecurity company, do not go and put cybersecurity in the search term bar. Every contract lists out cybersecurity, so it's not going to be very helpful. So you need to get more granular with your search terms. You need to experiment with them, but you can set up automatic searches and scan daily. That will help you manage what the new stuff is. Okay. More specific parameters will result in better opportunities. These are the things you need to define within your business development planning, within your market research, but these are basically your search terms. Keywords, key phrases of the work that you do, your NAICS and PSC codes, the combinations, right? So you can go and see your competitors on their contracts if you don't have any, and use those, right? So basically go through SAM.gov and you can see which ones are going to expire in the next 6 to 9 months. Okay. Within this is your checklist to develop your ideal opportunity profile. Okay. The answers to these questions are something that you guys can do today to define your search criteria and to improve your pipeline. You want to compare the answers of your ideal opportunity profile, the answers to these questions. You want to compare all new opportunities to these answers and rank them in priority based on how closely they align to these answers. Okay. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this class. I kind of strayed a little bit away from the, I have Virginia PTAC up here. So you have a new website, right, Yasmin?
Yes, it's marylandapex.org.
marylandapex.org. There you go. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you. That was a great presentation, a quick deep dive.
Yep.
And it looks like you were answering the questions as we went along. So I don't see any other questions in the chat. If you have a quick question for David, now's your chance to type it out. And Dave, while we're waiting for that, sorry, David, can you tell us about part 2 of this class? You mentioned there's a part 2.
Yeah. All right. So today we talked about everything up to step 5, basically. It was a very brief overview of a lot of these things. Part 2 is how to qualify each individual opportunity. And that's really what we would go on beyond this. It's like, okay, well, now we've built the opportunity. Let's say we have 50 opportunities in our pipeline. Well, how do we know which ones are real? How do we, like, what do we do next? That's what step 6 is about, is qualifying each individual opportunity. So this is actually one of the main problems of a large business. Is that a lot of the business developers, and if you guys have a business development manager or somebody in charge of a pipeline or growth within your organization, a lot of times their metrics are like the dollar size and the total value of their pipeline. Well, most of that stuff isn't real. Like, a friend of mine worked at a large business. He was talking to me about this all the time. You know, they would go to their executive meetings and be like, "Oh man, we have $4.5 billion in our pipeline." And my buddy would look at them, the people talking, and be like most of that stuff is fantasy. Like you probably have $800 million of real stuff in there, and then your win probability in your factored pipeline that I talked about is going to come off that 800 million. But you know the executives are up there reporting the total value of their pipeline instead of what's real. So that's really what this part two of this class will be about, and you know we can talk about scheduling that. But what do you do after you find an opportunity? Like, what are the next steps?
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely reach out to you with some dates to do that in the new year. So thanks for that. And I don't know if there's any new questions that have come in. Oh, do you have a sample pipeline spreadsheet?
In terms of fields, everybody's different, but basically what people track are agency, office, contract name, contract performance, incumbent, spending to date, total ceiling, expiration, RFP release date, and like description of the tasks. Like there's a lot more you can track, but that's usually it.
Okay, thanks. And somebody's asking, are you taking on new clients?
Yes, we are. You can give us a call. You can give me a call if you'd like. I'll get down there. There you
Okay,
go.
great. Well, once you send this over, David, I'll send it out to everybody with a copy of the recording. I'd like to thank David again for a great presentation and thank you all for participating. And we hope to see you at a future Apex Accelerator event. Take care, everybody.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it, y'all. See ya.